I've looked through the trunk several times and have shared some of the items that are in the trunk at a previous family reunion. And today it was very heartwarming to see more of the family get involved with opening and reading and sharing a lot of our family history going back to the 19 to the 1800s. Mm-hmm. I especially enjoyed uh, the reading of the articles that are found in the scrapbook.
It was built in Liverpool, 32,000 tons.
Hmm. Did it? Was this boat something that had artillery on it?
It was a troop carrier because it was an ocean liner, okay. So they used it as a troop carrier to take. And I think Bompa did made what 17 trips back and forth from Liverpool from France, because he was in France for, I mean, they docked in France and they would come back and forth. I think they said he made 17 trips back and forth.
When the trunk was opened, I was overwhelmed because I had never seen the trunk before. Just the exterior of the trunk was much more superior and sophisticated than I anticipated. And like Deborah, I enjoyed the scrapbook, so to speak. And it talked about people in Elmira that I knew of when I was a very small child, in addition to my family members. It talked about things in there that I did not know about the family or my family members. I did not realize how prolific a lawman my grandfather was. He made a lot of arrests, and they kept alluding to this photographic memory that he had, and I had never heard that before. So that was something. I'm just in awe of everything. I just don't know how to feel about it. I'm just sorry that I didn't know about this sooner. I've always been, yes, the treasures that my grandmother kept. I know she saved a lot of things and took every article that we ever did, and even the grandkids. I remember she used to cut out all the articles and keep them. But I never, till today, realized how talented people in our family are and how far it goes back. You know, that we're very resilient people and we use our God given talents to persevere. So that's what I gained from it.
Oh boy. Um, like Dee Dee says, I am extremely overwhelmed by all y'all and the contents that we just looked at in the trunk.
She came to Elmira and worked in some of the best families here and saved her money. When she had enough for her husband to pay his way north, she managed to get it to him by the famous underground route, and then he bade goodbye to the old plantation and traveling by night through Washington, Philadelphia, Harrisburg.
I spent most of my life on this, growing up, fooling around, being, silly on the south side of Elmira, and so I wasn't really exposed to a lot of the history. And as a result, of the influence that was going on in the '60s, I have to admit that I felt somewhat insignificant. Um, too frankly, too black for the South Side, and sometimes not black enough for to be across town. So that affected me in a deep way, and so I went through some stuff, and I left Elmira, the military, just to grow up and to find out who I was. And sitting here today, looking in that box, I know who I am. Okay, I know that the people that came before me were significant. They weren't trifling. Um, these are well-respected people that came before us, and it affected many lives in Elmira. And I have to say, I am overwhelmed with pride today at the things I've learned, and there's still so much yet to learn as we go through this.
My earliest memory of Nanny and Bampa was in the house 710 Benjamin Street. Um, Dad took us over there for something. I can't remember what, because we were going over there like on Sundays or something like that after church. And my earliest memory was going into the kitchen and seeing this big stove that Nanny had in the kitchen on Benjamin Street, and she was cooking. She had baked some cookies, right? And uh, and Bampa, you're looking at his card, his pistol permit that said he was 5'11". Well, when you're a small kid, and you look it up at somebody that's 5'11", I mean, he was a giant
Yes, he
to
was.
me, as a kid, and that's how I remember him. It was only, until recently, when, you would hear all the stories, even the family reunion had back in '95, when we did a similar interview with Aunt Jenny and Aunt Sarah, and Dad was sitting there chiming in the background. That you did really figure out or find out a lot more information about the family that I did not know. And now, after all of the other stories I've been hearing, about Bampa and Nanny and the things they did with the Masons, and Nanny being a signature on the Eastern Stars, on the charter that created the Eastern Stars, and now the total revelation that he had started the Negro Democratic Committee, a group, and it was incorporated 8 or 9 counties in upstate New York. And the last picture I took was of the convention, the first convention they had. I had no idea that Bampa was that involved in the Democratic Party on the state level, and because, I mean, I'm just getting
relate to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I'm getting chills now because I'm the chair of the Chemung County Democratic Committee, and it is overwhelming. I'm just, I took pictures because I want to take it back because we have some work to do, and this is important. I think, connection for me to carry forward the same work that he was doing in 1934.
My memories of Bampa and Nanny are more those of caregiving or buying my Girl Scout cookies. Um, so, whenever Nanny would come over and take care of us on occasion, whenever like Mom may have been in the hospital. I mean, she had 8 children. I'm second to the oldest, and then there are 8 of us all together. But Nanny, and I remember when I worked at Corning Community College, Nanny was staying with Aunt Sarah in Corning, and I would go over there at lunchtime, and Aunt Sarah would make lunch, and Nanny and Aunt Sarah and I would sit there and talk and chat, and they'd share pictures with me, and that sort of thing. So I feel their spirit. I feel that they are looking down on us and watching what it is that we're doing and how we're doing it, and that they're pleased with uh, how we've grown as a family. No family is perfect, and nothing back then was perfect. But there's enough going on that's positive that I think that we represent the family well.
Growing up in Elmira, it was, for me, in my early childhood, it was idyllic. I mean, I was an only child. I didn't know anything about racism or colors. And I didn't even know that my grandmother was not the same color as the rest of us. I did not know that. people would tell me she's white, and I said, no, she's not. You know, but that didn't really mean much to me, and I didn't care really. And she never brought it up or made a difference about it with any of us. We were all her grandchildren. Um, she wasn't a huggy, nurturing grandmother with her grandchildren. Now, I know she was with our oldest cousin, Butchie, who was 10 years older than myself, because she more or less raised her, and they were very close. So that was her little baby. That was like her baby girl.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were very, very close. And the rest of us, you know, Nanny was starting to get, her health was failing by the time we started coming. And she couldn't pick any of us up anymore as babies because she had an accident on the escalator at Sears and fell down and really injured herself.
Mm.
And so that was the end of her like picking us up and really babysitting to any extent. She would babysit because my mother died when I was 14. My brother was 9 and my sister was 6. So she initially, when that happened, she would come and stay over, but she really she couldn't really do that much for us, but cook and watch us. You know, she couldn't discipline us. Do we need discipline? Not really. Teresa, yeah.
Teresa Holiday.
Yeah.
She's
Not here.
yeah.
She's not here. She needed discipline.
Yeah.
She had to be wound up. You know, you had to snatch her up because she
Yeah.
was a mover.
Yeah.
But she was just a very kind grandmother. She cooked very nutritious food. We did not eat soul food. Now you have to be reminded of our grandmother's background. We did not. The soul food came from our mothers.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm.
There were no, grandmother cooked Brussels sprouts, asparagus. There were no collard greens and all that. But the food was delicious. She made roast pork and sauerkraut. She cooked German type European meals,
Mm.
and they were very good. And roast beef, and it was delicious. And I prefer that even now to some soul food dishes, you know, and that became my choice for my palate, you know, over the years. So that was interesting, but she just wasn't touchy feely with us, and that may have been to do with her background too, because I don't think she had a lot of.
Yeah, and then just to piggyback off of that,
Mhm.
Bamba also passed away when we were relatively young. I was
Yeah.
in middle school
Mhm.
when Bamba passed away, and I got it. I was in middle school when Bamba passed away,
Mhm.
and Nanny passed away shortly after I was married.
Right.
And so Bampa's existence in our life, I think he passed when he was in his 50s, maybe.
1966.
What his age though? Yeah,
Maybe 58.
yeah,
He's 58,
in
yeah.
his
young,
in his 50s. So he was
Mhm.
relatively young,
Yeah.
but he lived a prolific life.
He sure did.
Okay.
Hey, he was my buddy. I thought he belonged to me. He also had never, Debbie, remember this? Whenever you would see him, he always had a pocket full of silver dollars.
Yes.
And ever his grandchildren, you remember this?
Yes, I
His
do.
grandchildren, you come up, you always got a silver dollar from him. Always.
Mm.
And that was a nice thing to think about him. He would just be jingling in his pocket. I guess he was waiting for us to ask for our money. But we never spent the money. I mean, it would disappear. I'd show it to somebody and it would get put up supposedly in the bank.
Mhm.
I never saw it again, but it was what happened. Jerry, do you remember that? You don't
No,
remember?
I don't remember.
You don't
I don't remember the silver dollar thing.
That was
No,
you and him in the silver dollar.
obviously, yep.
Yeah.
That was just you.
That was his girl.
Yeah,
His
but
little
you
buddy.
had, but that's because there was 10 years difference between his previous grandchild and then here I came, and then Michael came a year after me. So by that time I had him. I had him on lockdown. But I really loved my grandfather, and no matter if somebody says he did this or he did that, I don't care. He was perfect to me. He was a man that took care of his family. Even as adults, he made sure that they all, their children all had homes. And Debbie reminded me of this weekend that he got each of them into their first home
Yeah.
for home ownership. And then he did two of them at the same time. He did their Wilbur's family and our family got into homes at the exact same time. And then I don't know what he did for Sarah. Of course, Sarah married Earl Briggs a long time prior and moved to Corning, and they had a really nice house.
Yeah, up there on the hill.
Right, they
Yeah,
had a really nice house. And then Aunt Jenny, he helped Aunt Jenny too. Aunt Jenny first lived at one of his properties on Benjamin Street. Her and Uncle Dave were there. They had a fire in that house, and when he just said okay and bought him a house on Washington Street.
Yeah.
Right around the corner from us.
Right around the corner from 607.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then they refurbished the house, and Nanny and Papa moved down into the house that was refurbished. I mean, it was just like there was never any. I never saw any struggle with the family in terms of financial.
No.
Never.
Well, I was pretty young when Bampa passed away, but I knew him to be a very kind man. I knew he would go out of his way to come here, partner. You know, that's what his name for me. He'd pick me up, give me a hug, and ask me how I was doing that day, and always checking me to obey your mom and dad, don't be a fool, and and make sure that whatever you do, you grow up, you do the family proud. Then he went into the VA home when he had a stroke, and I didn't get to see him much after that. Matter of fact, I was away in the Air Force when he passed away. Nanny, on the other hand, I remember that like for a while there, every Christmas we'd have her over to the house. She'd stay there, and she'd be there in the morning when we opened up presents and everything. And I remember she would always give us the kiss. I always thought her lips were a little on the dry side, but she'd always give me this kiss on the side of the cheek. And I remember how kind she was and how cool she was. And I remember how you were with her.
How was I?
You were like glue stuck to her.
Did I was crazy?
Yes, you did. And but I also remember that as I got older and had some responsibilities, I'd go for my Saturday haircut. I'd go over to either Dickie Jones or Adon Allen, and Dad would drop me off, and then afterwards he'd tell me to go around the corner.
Go cut that grass.
Cut that grass. That's right. And Dad would come by and he'd make sure I cut it right too. Make sure you get clean all around the edges and everything. And that was my thing with Nanny every other weekend. And after being done, she always had some treat for me. Some little pastry or some cookie or sometimes on a really good day, some ice cream. But I was very sad that when she passed away because I could not be here because I was away in the Air Force, and I was really heartbroken about that because I had learned that she was also a very spiritual woman, and I mean no joke, and always reading the Bible. Yeah, she was a Jehovah's Witness from what I learned. Yeah, and among the GAT community, she had high respect.
Yes.
Very high respect. And I'm sitting here, with you guys and looking at this stuff, and these feelings of missing her or missing Bappa are they're like right here, and I missed a lot. I missed a lot.
Well,
you can feel the ancestors. You can feel their spirit in the room, and and that's a very heartwarming sensation.
I'll say something about that, Jamal. When I was young and being stupid and thinking about getting in some kind of trouble, right? There was always like this voice in the back of my head saying, "Don't do it. Don't go there." And to this day, I believe that was Nanny, who prayed a whole lot about keeping me straight. And that voice, I hear it right. Even today, I hear that voice right there. And I miss that woman.
she taught me how to sew. I was just going to go to that. And crochet. Yes. And I'll never, one time I committed myself in junior high school to making this skirt, a kilt. And so I had my father or my grandfather, one of them went uptown and bought this expensive materials, like real kilt material. I always went right for the most expensive one. They bought it, of course, whoever one of them bought it. And I'm going to make this kilt. Didn't know how to sew a stitch. So I got started, and then I was making these pleats. I said, oh, Lord, I'm not going to finish this on time to get a grade. So I carried my little bundle over to Nanny's house, and she sat me. No. Okay. She sat me at that center sewing machine, and when you walk that,
what
that
I'm
dining
talking
room, with the pedal, and she made me do like that, and she made me sew that skirt.
I was gonna say, I was thinking about the Singer sewing machine because it was in my mom and dad's bedroom.
Okay.
It came to our house,
Okay.
and that's how I learned how to sew.
Okay.
And you had to pump the feet up part of it up and down.
It was a long pedal.
Yeah.
Nothing but
It was a big deal.
yeah.
I'm never playing with that.
That was not an easy thing to do. But Nanny showed me, and she could sew. I mean, she made beautiful clothes. My father went to Lincoln University. He got a scholarship for
Football.
Track and field, football, basketball, you name it. He got he got an athletic scholarship to Lincoln in Pennsylvania. It was a HBCU, a male. It was a male school
All male,
at
yeah.
that time. And she made him a suit to wear to go to school in. Now, how many young men would wear a suit that their mother made? And there's a picture of him in this suit, and the suit is really nice. You would not know it didn't come from the store, and it was a wool type suit. So that's how good she was.
And I think I know that she developed that skill as a result of being in the industrial school for girls. And they taught them a variety of different crafts, but sewing was among them. And the way that Bampa actually met Nanny was through the Colemans, Winston and Rowley and Howard's mom and dad. Nanny was a seamstress for them, and that's how Bampa met Nanny.
Okay, they lived down the street from them,
right there
on Benjamin Street, and she came to Elmira as she was hired by Gordon Coy to be the seamstress or the tailor at their store. And that's how she came to Elmira. And then she stayed in a rooming house somewhere in Elmira, and from there you go. See, my grandfather's journey was all there in Elmira. That was all of our journey. So there was nothing unusual about the places that he visited or the steps that he walked in were the same steps we walked in, basically. Elmira used to be what they call the jumping town. That used to be the center of everything. People used to party there. You know, they had big bands came there. Yeah, and then they had dances at the Carpenter Hall with all the famous big band people, all the black bands.
Elmira used to be a major,
Circuit. And
yeah,
people used to
on the
come-
vaudeville circuit. That's
and
it.
then people used to come from all the surrounding
Mhm.
smaller places like Auburn, Ithaca, Binghamton wasn't smaller, but they still used to come, and that's where they would have these big parties at the Federation Hall.
Yeah.
I mean, and everybody was going. I don't know who babysit for any of us because they were all going.
I did.
I guess I did too. You babysit yourself and your siblings because they was getting dressed up and they were gone.
I had babysitting duty and I left because I wanted to go to this dance at Trinity Church, one of the churches down there on Main and Church. And don't you know, Wilbur B came and got me.
Mhm.
Because I was supposed to be babysitting for Anna and
Not me, but the other one.
this
Must
one
have been
here
after I left.
and Chris. Yeah.
After I left, yeah, it fell to him.
Yeah, it was
Dominoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
tell
did
you,
not like babysitting, let me tell you.
but they used to have a good time.
Still
And
don't.
our parents used to have house parties.
Yeah.
Pekino.
And
Pekino, right.
With family. Yeah.
Basement parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basement.
We did the basement in 6
Right.
and 7 so that we could have,
We could have our friends over so they knew right where we were,
All
what
right,
we were doing,
You
and
don't have to go out.
yeah, all of our friends to our
out whenever you
parents.
wanted to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was just it was just a very good childhood.
So tell me about Ada and who is she to the family?
Well, Ada is a curiosity.
Good word.
And based on the information we got from
Eric.
and his research that he was doing on Ancestry.com and all of the DNA and evidence that he's been using to connect all together. She is a person who got around and she was involved in a whole lot of different stuff. And she wound up, I believe she was a survivor and she did all those things. She did a lot of things to survive and to make sure that her children survive as well, including putting them in, in foster care and stuff like that. And I guess changing their ethnicity from one to the next in order to make sure that they could take advantage of whatever, opportunities that might be there, to help to support them. So, for me, I can see, yes, probably a book in there somewhere, and if we were able to put all those stories that we've been reading about and all the articles and things like that, I'm sure someone would certainly come up with a very, very, very good saga, three-part series.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that there were so many newspaper articles about Ada. I mean, folks don't make the papers that often. Now, they were all articles about things that were done that were against the law. But yet, it was there. It's like there's this trail that you can follow that helps us better understand our background, our history, our genetics.
She was with intention.
Yeah.
I mean, most things that she did, if she was fighting, it was with intention. She was protecting her children, her son from people calling him the N-word, and this is back in 1890. And doing all these things. I mean, she would fight to the death for her children. After her husband died, she was a widow very early. Her husband died in his 30s from consumption. Hard-working man, worked with that steel, was it steel or iron, making scythes. in these factories in
Grinding.
in Connecticut,
Grinding.
up here in Collinswood,
Yeah.
Collinsville, Connecticut, and then going over to Auburn, New York. So he died early. And then after that, she wasn't a working woman. She had no skills. She had already been in a Connecticut Girls Institute for Wayward Girls because she had problems with her mother and some problems in her home life, which we're not sure of what that consisted of. And so she was a troubled young woman. She got married to our great grandfather was 28 years old when they got married, and she was 18. So she was probably in her 20s when she was widowed. I mean, it was just sad. And we think she had 3 children at the time that she was left with. That would be our great uncle Wilbur, our grandmother Viola, and their sister Julia. Also, we think she was also called Dahlia. And then she got up with this man who didn't want the kids around. So Wilbur, being a teenager, took off on his own. He took off on his own, and he was old enough to work. So he worked around New York State all his life. Even he had some highlights too. He was actually, by family history, invented the snowmobile, and it was taken from him and patented by some Frenchmen who get all the credit for it. But Wilbur Elcha is really the inventor of the snowmobile that we know today. The prototype, and then our grandmother, she went to the girls' home when she was released from there. She went to live with a family in Cayuga County. I told you the city. What's
Cayuga?
the city? No.
Hammondsport?
No, forget it.
All right.
There's another little city up there in Cayuga County. And she worked there, and their last name was Coin, like Conn or something like that. And they were perhaps of German descent. And we always heard that because that's the way she cooked that kind of food, and you could tell the way she did things. And she worked for them for a while, and then she struck out on her own and went back to Auburn. She never was far from Auburn, New York. She never went back to Connecticut ever to live. I guess there wasn't probably a lot of good memories for her there because she was disenfranchised from her family when she was sent to when she was sent to industrial school for girls, for destitute Indians. It was called the Thomas Children's Home for Destitute Indians or something like that, and that was in Iroquois, New York. She went there, and Julia or Dahlia, also called Dahlia, went there. And at some point, Dahlia the mother, Ada, came and picked Julia up and took her to wherever she was going. And then by that time, Ada had 2 other children, Madeline and Charlotte. And they were supposed to be the children of Mr. Peckman, also called Peckham, but it's Peckman. And they were taken from her, as was Aunt Julia, because they were living somewhere in Syracuse or down someplace in New York State, and they had been abused. That's what was the accusation by the relatives male relatives that she had left them with. She had left them with her half brother Frank. Frank, what was Frank's last name? Harris. Harris. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but he was. Yeah, okay. But her Grant, his Frank Grant, because he was her child.
His last name was Harris, and if this was her brother's last name was Harris.
But it wasn't. It was Grant because that child was born before she married Mr. Harris. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. And he's been consistently in the picture with Ada, even when Ada was growing up and in trouble, and when her daughters, when they took the daughters from her, when Ada's daughters were taken from them, he was there, as was this Mr. Harry Wilcox, who is a family friend. Well, rumor in the family the information that I heard when I was young was that this Harry Wilcox was really Julia's father. Now that's allegedly, but there you go. So there was a lot of nonsense going on. And I'm sure on her part, it was financial decisions had to be made on Ada's part. And she left her kids where she could and went out to make money. And she did her business she was a clairvoyant, which is like a psychic today, and told fortunes and saw visions of people in the past, and all that. So she went, and they said, even Eric was telling us that she would rent like a room, a parlor in a hotel like we're doing today, and advertise in the community that she would be there, and then people would line up to see her at these events. And she would go from town to town, a lot of little towns in upstate New York where she could do this kind of stuff. She did it in Rhode Island too, and I believe she did it in Connecticut. So, and she kept that profession all through until the end of her life, as far as I can tell from, the articles in the newspaper and stuff. All the way along, she was fighting and leaving kids with different people, and the police were looking for her for abandonment of children. Somehow she seemed to have gathered the children up. They all seemed to have some relationship with her throughout their life. Certainly her son did. Wilbur, who she had not lived with in many years, was still in touch with his mother. I think they were very close, probably. She did a lot of fighting for him. And then our grandmother, Viola, I don't think so much that she talked about her mother, or she was so drawn to her mother, but she had to respect her as her mother, because at one point, when Ada was married to a Mr. McKinley, they came to Elmira, and they were getting elderly at this point. Came to Elmira it was the early 40s, I believe, to live in the house on Benjamin Street under our grandfather's financial assistance. And they were going along fine until because he was white, and I assume at this point she was passing for white, because at various times she passed for half-breed Indian, other times she was a mulatto, other times she was a full-blooded Indian. So, there's a lot to that. Anyway, so this time, I guess this day, she was passing for white with her husband, and they were downtown Elmira on Water Street shopping. Aunt Jenny had been down there with her baby, who was our cousin Jenny, also called Butch, and then the stroller, and here comes these two, and crossed over the street to avoid talking to them. in front of the people on the street. So Aunt Jenny said, and went home and told her father what they did, and he promptly put them on the train going east. And that's that story.